Good evening, students, and welcome back to another gentle journey with the Pillow Professor. Tonight, as the moon hangs quietly above and your pillow cradles your thoughts, we'll be curling up with a story that stretches back tens of thousands of years, one that begins in the flickering shadows of ancient campfires and winds all the way to your cozy living room. Yes, tonight's topic is the history of dogs. Whether they're curled at our feet, chasing after tennis balls, or simply gazing at us with those soulful eyes, dogs have been by our side through wars and weddings, harvests and heartbreaks. But how did this remarkable bond begin? How did wild wolves become our most loyal companions? And what stories do the paw prints of the past still whisper to us? We'll unravel the mystery together, one chapter at a time, from ancient caves to castle courtyards, from Egyptian temples to city sidewalks. Tonight's tale is one of friendship, trust, and timeless love. So, my dear students, if you're ready, I ask just a little favor. Kindly tap that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and in the spirit of companionship, let us know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. It's always so lovely to see our classroom stretching across countries and time zones. Now take a deep breath, let your eyelids rest gently, and settle in. Our first chapter begins not in a kennel or even a cave, but in the vast wilderness of the ancient world, where a silent truce between species would soon blossom into one of the most extraordinary friendships in history. Long, long ago, tens of thousands of years before the first city rose or the first wheel turned, humans were not farmers nor builders nor kings. They were quiet wanderers, clothed in animal hides, moving with the rhythm of the seasons. They lit their fires in the open, told stories beneath the stars, and hunted to survive. And somewhere in the cold silence of those prehistoric nights, a pair of amber eyes watched from the edge of the shadows. Those eyes belonged not to friend nor foe, but to wolf. Back then, wolves and humans were not so different. They were both clever, social hunters. They moved in tight-knit groups, protected their young fiercely, and relied on cooperation to bring down prey. And yet, for a time, they lived apart, cautious and curious of one another, until one night, perhaps, a bold wolf crept just a little closer to the fire, not to snarl or bite, but to share warmth or perhaps a scrap of meat. What followed was not a single moment, but a slow unfolding. Over generations, some wolves, likely the more docile and curious ones, began to linger near human camps. They learned that scavenging near people meant full bellies and less danger. And humans? They learned that wolves, when tolerated, could help keep away other predators. The wolves barked at threats, picked off vermin, and maybe even helped sniff out game. Bit by bit, the boundaries blurred. Wolves who stayed near humans may have begun to change, both in appearance and temperament. Perhaps their ears drooped slightly, their tails wagged more freely, their faces became softer, more expressive. Over time, they became less wolf and more something else. This was the first spark of domestication, not through force, but through mutual benefit. And while we may never know the precise place or time this began, archaeological evidence hints that it was likely over 15,000 years ago, and possibly much earlier. The oldest confirmed remains of a domesticated dog, found buried alongside a human in what is now Germany, date back around 14,000 years. That's older than any known civilization. And remarkably, the shift from wild wolf to early dog may have occurred in multiple places independently. Some scientists believe it happened in Europe, others in Central Asia, and some even in Siberia or the Middle East. But wherever it began, it was clear something new was unfolding in the bond between species. Imagine it, if you will, a quiet winter night, a flickering fire, and a small group of hunter-gatherers huddled beneath animal skins. Beside them, curled against the cold earth, is a creature with pointed ears and steady eyes. Not quite wolf, not yet Labrador, but already a companion. As generations passed, the humans may have chosen the friendlier pups, the ones who didn't growl when touched, who listened, who stayed close. And in turn, those gentler animals had pups of their own. Evolution guided not by nature alone, but by the hands and hearts of humans. These early dogs were likely working animals. They helped with hunting, carrying supplies, guarding the camp. But they were more than tools. We know this because some of the oldest dog burials show signs of affection. In one grave in what is now Israel, a human was buried with their hand gently resting on the body of a dog. This was not utility. This was bond. And it's worth pausing to think just how rare this is. Very few animals have walked this road beside us. We did not domesticate tigers or hyenas. We tamed horses and cattle much later. But dogs were the first. The oldest allies, our sentinels, our warmth on winter nights, our silent watchers beneath the stars. As the ice retreated and human societies evolved, dogs came with us. They adapted to new lands, new languages, and new needs. But at the root of it all was this ancient, almost sacred companionship. Not just one species shaping another, but two shaping each other. And so the age of companionship had begun. From that first quiet glance across a firelit clearing to the soft thud of a tail beside your bed, the story of dogs began with a shared silence and a shared need. A story not of taming the wild, but of meeting in the middle. As we move ahead into the next chapter, we'll trace how those first companion wolves began to change more dramatically, morphing in both mind and body to become something new. The first true dogs, in every sense of the word. Now that we've settled into the firelight of our ancient past, it's time to watch a quiet transformation take shape. One furred footstep at a time, the curious wolves who lingered at the edges of human camps were not just passive visitors. Over generations, they were becoming something new, something no longer quite wild and no longer quite wolf. They were becoming dogs. To understand how this change occurred, we must first dip our toes into the still waters of domestication. Domestication is not the same as taming. A tamed animal may obey a command, but its offspring are still wild at heart. A domesticated animal, however, is born changed. Its instincts softened, its mind reshaped over time through both natural and human-guided selection. With dogs, this process likely began unintentionally. Humans did not set out with a plan to engineer a loyal companion. Instead, the wolves who were least aggressive and most sociable tended to stick around the camp. These were the ones who could eat scraps without growling, sleep nearby without raising alarm. And over many generations, these traits became heritable, passed down in blood and bone. As this quiet selection continued, changes in behavior were accompanied by changes in appearance. This is known as domestication syndrome, a set of traits that often appear together when an animal is domesticated. In dogs, it meant things like floppy ears, shorter snouts, curly tails, and even changes in coat color. The wolves who once melted into the twilight now stood out with splashes of white and tan, with rounded faces and more expressive eyes. But the biggest change of all happened inside the mind. Early dogs began to read human cues, something wolves struggle to do even today. They learned to follow the direction of a finger, to notice the change in a voice, to respond to praise or warning. They began to bond not just out of habit, but out of emotional connection. Scientists believe this shift was due to changes in brain chemistry, specifically the increased release of oxytocin, the same hormone that strengthens bonds between human parents and children. And humans noticed. They began choosing puppies that were especially attentive, especially friendly, especially clever. These dogs became more than scavengers. They were partners. Around this time, dogs likely began playing more formal roles in human life. Some may have helped track prey, using their keen sense of smell and silent stalking. Others may have guarded the camp from predators or rival tribes. And of course, some were simply companions, warming feet, easing loneliness, and perhaps even helping teach the young. We find echoes of this shift in the archaeological record. In regions as diverse as Siberia, Belgium, and the Middle East, the remains of dogs appear buried alongside humans, often with care, In one ancient grave dated to nearly 12,000 years ago, a dog was buried with a person and a mammoth bone. The gesture seems symbolic, perhaps suggesting a shared journey or the honoring of a loyal friend. Interestingly, modern genetic studies have shown that all domestic dogs, whether Chihuahua or Great Dane, descend from a now extinct wolf population that diverged from other wolves over 20,000 years ago. That means every wagging tail, every playful bark, can trace its ancestry to a long-vanished lineage of wolves who dared to trust us. But it wasn't just humans shaping dogs. Dogs were shaping us too. Some scientists suggest that our partnership with dogs may have given early humans a competitive edge over Neanderthals. With dogs helping to hunt and protect, our ancestors may have been more efficient, more secure, and more mobile. Dogs expanded our reach. They helped us take risks, travel farther, settle in unfamiliar lands. In a very real sense, they may have helped us survive. This period of transformation from wolf to proto-dog is one of the great mysteries of human history. It happened slowly, without fanfare. There were no breeding charts, no kennels, no collars, just quiet trust, mutual benefit, and the beginnings of a bond so deep it would shape entire cultures. As we drift toward the next chapter, picture those early dogs following humans across ancient grasslands and snowy trails, not leashed, not commanded, just walking beside us, ears alert, tails curled, eyes full of a trust that would echo for millennia. In the chapters to come, we'll explore how dogs became woven into the very fabric of human societies, from temple guardians and spirit guides to hunting hounds and palace pets. But always at the heart of it all is this humble beginning, a wild creature who chose to stay close, and a human who let them in. As humans began to settle, the world around them transformed. No longer did we chase herds across icy tundra or wander endlessly in search of food. Villages rose from the earth like sprouting seeds. Crops were planted, livestock was herded, and through every quiet sunrise and smoke-touched twilight, dogs remained by our sides, no longer visitors but part of the hearth. The story of dogs in ancient civilizations is as vast and varied as the world itself. In every corner of the early human world, dogs took on different roles. They were guards, guides, hunters, herders, and always companions. Let's begin in Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization. In the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates, some of the earliest cities flourished. Uruk, Babylon, Nineveh. Within these cities, dogs were not just tolerated, they were respected. Clay tablets written in cuneiform, the earliest form of writing, mentioned dogs by name. They served as protectors of homes, temple attendants, and even soldiers on the battlefield. Some Mesopotamian gods were even linked to dogs. Gula, the goddess of healing, was often depicted with a dog at her side. The connection between dogs and healing might seem curious at first, but even today, science supports the calming, restorative presence of a gentle dog. It seems our ancestors sensed it long before we had the words to explain it. Further south, in the land of the Nile, ancient Egyptians also held dogs in high regard. Hieroglyphs show images of sleek, long-legged hounds with narrow muzzles, dogs that resemble modern greyhounds or Seleucus. These elegant creatures were companions of pharaohs and hunters alike. In fact, some dogs were so beloved that they were mummified, buried with great care to accompany their owners into the afterlife. One particularly touching example is the story of a dog named Abutiyu, who served in the palace of a pharaoh over 4,000 years ago. His tomb inscription reads like an epitaph of affection, describing a noble animal who served faithfully and was buried with honors usually reserved for humans. Even then, it seems, the bond ran deep. In ancient China, dogs were likewise cherished. As far back as the Shang dynasty, over 3,000 years ago, dogs appear in oracle bone inscriptions. They were used in hunting, but also in rituals and protection. Certain breeds, like the early ancestors of the Pekingese or the Chow Chow, were even seen as sacred, kept by royalty and sometimes thought to guard against evil spirits. The Chinese zodiac, which dates back thousands of years, includes the dog among its 12 animals, a symbol of loyalty and protection. Traveling across oceans and forests, we find that indigenous cultures throughout the Americas also held dogs in high regard. The Inuit of the Arctic bred sturdy sled dogs, essential for surviving the frozen wilderness. In the American Southwest, the ancestral Pueblones raised small dogs that lived alongside them, their bones sometimes found in ceremonial spaces, suggesting spiritual importance. In Mesoamerica, dogs played a vital role in both daily life and the spiritual realm. The Aztecs and Maya believed that a certain kind of dog, the Xoloitzcuintli, or Xolo, had the power to guide souls through the underworld. These hairless dogs, still around today, were often buried with the dead to help their spirit find peace. In this way, dogs were not only companions in life, but in death as well. Dogs were also part of the Indus Valley Civilization, one of the most mysterious ancient cultures located in what is now modern Pakistan and India. Though little writing survives, artwork and figurines suggest that dogs were part of daily life, walking through the markets, guarding the homes and playing with children beneath clay brick walls. And throughout all these ancient cultures, whether drawn in ink, etched in stone, or carved from bone, dogs appear beside humans, not behind them. They're depicted walking with us, sleeping near us, looking up at us, always close. What is perhaps most remarkable is how similar the role of dogs was across cultures that never met. Despite oceans and deserts between them, early societies all saw something special in these animals. They were not just useful, they were meaningful, symbols of loyalty, of courage, of companionship. They were part of the family, and even now, thousands of years later, these ancient roles linger. When your dog curls up near the door, watching over your home, it is echoing the watchdogs of Babylon. When it follows you from room to room, eyes full of understanding, it is walking the same path as the dogs who once guarded pharaohs and guided souls. As the ancient world gave way to the classical age, the role of dogs continued to expand and evolve. In our next chapter, we'll explore how dogs stepped into the myths and legends of ancient Greece and Rome, taking on magical forms, becoming symbols of strength, and sometimes even guardians of the afterlife. But for now, picture a quiet home in a faraway past, a flickering oil lamp, the scent of bread in the air, a family gathering for the evening, and nestled by the door, eyes half closed but ears still alert, lies a dog, a quiet sentinel, a loyal heart, a friend. While dogs have always shared our fires, fields, and footpaths, they have also walked with us in the worlds we imagine, woven into our myths, beliefs, and the mysteries that once explained the unknown. Across cultures and continents, dogs have been more than pets or partners. They have been symbols, spirits, and sentinels between this world and the next. Let us begin in ancient Egypt, where gods were never far from daily life. Among the pantheon of deities, one stands out in striking profile: Anubis, the jackal-headed god of mummification and the afterlife. Often shown with a sleek black body and upright ears, Anubis guided souls through the realm of the dead. Though technically modelled on a jackal, his image likely drew from the familiar forms of dogs, who guarded the deserts and cemeteries where early Egyptians laid their dead to rest. The black fur of Anubis symbolized rebirth, much like the fertile black soil along the Nile. In this way, the image of the dog, or dog-like being, was tied not only to death, but also to renewal. In the still hush of tombs and sacred rites, the dog was a guardian, both fierce and faithful. Traveling north to ancient Greece, we find another canine of legend, Cerberus, the monstrous hound of Hades, described with 3 heads, a serpent's tail, and a mane of snakes. Cerberus stood watch at the gates of the underworld, ensuring that no soul escaped. And though terrifying in appearance, Cerberus was not evil, he was loyal, performing his duty without question. A grim echo perhaps of the loyalty we still associate with dogs today. Cerberus appears in many Greek myths, most famously in the tale of Heracles, who was tasked with capturing the beast as one of his 12 labors. And yet, when Heracles brings Cerberus to the surface, the dog does not bite or maul, it is restrained, watchful, even obedient. Here again, the dog is not simply a monster, it is a protector, and perhaps even a misunderstood guardian of sacred boundaries. In Norse mythology, the fearsome Garm plays a similar role. Described as a blood-covered hound, Garm guards the gates of hell, the realm of the dead. At the end of days, Ragnarok, he is said to break free and do battle with the gods. Like Cerberus, he embodies the idea of threshold and transformation, of guarding the space between life and death. But dogs are not always associated with such grim domains. In Celtic lore, they appear as guides, warriors and companions of great heroes. The Irish hero Cuchulainn was named after a dog he killed in self-defense, offering to take its place as guardian until a replacement could be raised. The very word cu means hound and was considered a mark of honor. To be compared to a dog was not an insult, but a badge of loyalty and strength. In the Americas, stories of spirit dogs abound. Among the Aztecs, the hairless Ixochitlani was thought to guide souls through Mictlan, the 9-layered underworld. Ixochitls were sometimes sacrificed and buried with their owners, not out of cruelty, but from a belief that the dog's spirit would help the soul navigate the afterlife's many dangers. Even in death, dogs walked beside us. In Japanese folklore, dogs known as Inu are protectors against evil. The Inugami, or dog god, is a spirit that can be both guardian and curse depending on how it is summoned. The duality of the Inugami reflects how dogs were viewed, capable of both ferocity and tenderness, symbols of both strength and vulnerability. Even in medieval Europe, as Christianity spread across the continent, the image of the dog retained symbolic power. Dogs came to represent faithfulness, as seen in stained glass windows and illuminated manuscripts. Saint Roch, a popular figure in Catholic tradition, was said to have been nursed back to health in the forest by a loyal dog who brought him bread each day. And yet, the dog's role in myth was not always comforting. In parts of Britain and Germany, tales tell of the Black Dog, a spectral creature with glowing eyes said to haunt lonely roads and moors. These dogs, often silent, were omens of death or misfortune. But even here, there is ambiguity. In some stories, the black dog protects travelers or warns them of danger ahead. In others, it escorts them gently into the beyond. Throughout all these tales, whether guiding souls, guarding sacred spaces, or delivering divine messages, dogs are cast as more than animals. They are bridges between the mortal and the divine, between the living and the dead, between fear and comfort. It is a role that still lingers, in a softer form. Consider how, even today, we speak of dogs as being in tune with human emotion. They know when we are grieving. They sense when we are afraid. It is almost as if, in some quiet corner of their mind, they remember their ancient duties. Their role not just as pets, but as watchers, as guides, as old souls in loyal bodies. As we leave behind the worlds of myth and step back into the realm of empire and empire builders, we'll next explore how dogs became not just symbols, but citizens of sprawling kingdoms. In our next chapter, we turn to the marble roads and sprawling villas of ancient Rome, where dogs guarded gates, raced in arenas, and were loved like children. But tonight, as you drift in this chapter of legends, picture a quiet dream world, one where you are never lost, never alone, a world where, no matter how dark the road, there is always the gentle sound of paws beside you. As the sun rose over the marble columns and bustling marketplaces of the Roman Empire, dogs padded through every layer of life, accompanying soldiers along the frontiers, guarding noble estates and curling up beside children in modest homes. In Rome, dogs were not only companions but also workers, warriors, entertainers, and cherished members of the family. The Romans, as with much of what they touched, systematized their relationship with dogs. They categorized breeds by purpose, discussed training techniques, and celebrated the qualities of a good hound in poetry and prose. Dogs were not wild creatures clinging to the edges of human settlement. They were firmly woven into the tapestry of Roman life. The most common dogs in Rome were Molossian hounds, large, muscular dogs believed to be descended from Greek war dogs. These powerful animals were used for guarding homes and livestock, and occasionally for battle. Roman soldiers brought dogs on campaign, not just for protection, but also for morale. Imagine weary legions crossing cold, unfamiliar lands, how the familiar thump of a tail or the press of a warm flank could ease the ache of distance and fear. Some of these dogs wore armor, specially designed to protect them during skirmishes. There are accounts of dogs serving with legions stationed as far away as Britannia, standing watch at night while soldiers slept. Though their names are lost to history, their loyalty echoes still. But Roman dogs were not only soldiers, they were status symbols as well. Wealthy families kept small companion breeds, often carried in the arms of noble women or tucked into their laps during long carriage rides. These lap dogs were pampered with ribbons and oils, and even had epitaphs carved when they passed away. One such inscription reads, "My eyes were wet with tears, our little dog, when I bore thee to the grave. So, Patricus, never again shall you give me 1,000 kisses." Beyond the villas and palaces, dogs roamed the crowded streets of Rome's cities. Some were strays, others were working animals, rat catchers, guard dogs, or helpers in the bustling open-air markets. Despite the chaos of Roman urban life, dogs had a place in the rhythm of the city. They were fed, spoken to, and sometimes even immortalized in art and mosaics. One of the most famous images from this era is the cave cannon mosaic found at the entrance of a wealthy home in Pompeii. The phrase means "beware of dog," and it's accompanied by the image of a watchful black dog with bared teeth. It's a humorous but telling reminder that dogs were expected to guard the home, sometimes with barks, sometimes with bites. The Romans also held dog races and exhibitions, especially in the provinces. In amphitheaters, dogs were trained to perform tricks or participate in staged hunts. These spectacles, though less famous than the gladiatorial games, were part of Rome's endless appetite for entertainment. And while not all dogs were treated kindly in these venues, some became crowd favorites, loved for their cleverness or courage. Even in Roman literature, dogs appear again and again. Virgil in his Aeneid speaks of faithful hounds watching over flocks. Columella, in his agricultural writings, offers advice on breeding and training farm dogs. And Pliny the Elder, ever the curious scholar, describes the intelligence and loyalty of dogs with admiration. But perhaps the most touching moments are found not in grand monuments or famous scrolls, but in quiet graves and modest offerings. In tombs across the empire, archaeologists have uncovered dog collars made of bronze, engraved with the names of the animal and the owner. One collar read, "Hold me, lest I run away. I belong to Publius." It's a whisper across time, a reminder that even 2,000 years ago people worried about their dogs slipping out the door. Rome's love for dogs did not end with the empire's fall. When the legions receded and Europe tumbled into the shifting tides of the Middle Ages, dogs remained. They followed farmers into the fields. They watched over sleeping children. They barked at strangers from behind crumbling stone walls. The empire crumbled, but the bond endured. And so, as we leave behind the grandeur of Roman roads and the echo of sandals on stone, we step into the misty world of the medieval age. Castles rise, plagues spread, knights ride forth, and always, beside them, a dog. In our next chapter, we'll explore how dogs found new roles in the winding forests and bustling halls of the Middle Ages, as hunters, guardians, and companions in both peasant huts and royal courts. But for now, imagine a Roman street at dusk, the light golden, the air warm, and somewhere behind a carved stone gate, a dog lifts its head, not out of fear but out of habit, watching, waiting, ever loyal. As the Roman Empire faded into memory and Europe shifted into the winding, uncertain paths of the Middle Ages, dogs did not vanish with the marble and mosaics. Instead, they adapted just as they always had. In a world of castles and convents, plagues and pilgrimages, dogs walked beside monks, kings, peasants, and knights. They were protectors, providers, and perhaps most importantly, constant companions in an age where constancy was rare. The world had changed. Cities shrank, roads crumbled, and much of daily life revolved around survival, guarding crops, preserving food, and fending off threats both seen and unseen. In this uncertain age, dogs were not decorative, they were indispensable. Across Europe's countryside, most families lived in small thatched homes, close to the land and often closer to poverty. A family might have one or two animals, a cow, some chickens, and a dog. These dogs were not pampered pets. They were working partners, keeping rats at bay, herding livestock, and sounding alarms when danger approached. Their coats were coarse, their diets simple, and their loyalty unquestioned. These dogs were often referred to as cur dogs or farm dogs. They were hardy, medium-sized, with ears that pricked and tails that curled. They were not bred for looks, but for utility, and still many were loved with a tenderness that transcended their muddy paws. In more fortified settings like castles, dogs served higher status roles. Greyhounds and mastiffs were especially popular among nobility. Greyhounds, slender and swift, were used for hunting, while the enormous mastiffs guarded the gates. Their size alone was enough to deter thieves or intruders. Some mastiffs were even equipped with protective gear, spiked collars or padded armor, especially when they accompanied knights on the road. The hunt was a central pastime for medieval nobility, and dogs were essential participants. Packhounds tracked deer and boar through tangled forests, while smaller dogs flushed rabbits from the brush. The breeding and training of hunting dogs became a specialized art, with careful attention paid to lineage and temperament. Manuals from the period discussed dog care in great detail: what to feed them, how to treat illness, how to house them in kennels that were dry, warm, and dignified. One of the most famous medieval texts on hunting, The Master of Game, written in the early 15th century, praises dogs not only for their skill, but for their noble spirit. In this text, dogs are not mere tools, but partners worthy of respect and reward. Meanwhile, in monasteries where silence and contemplation filled the halls, dogs brought quiet companionship. Records show that monks occasionally kept dogs, especially smaller breeds, as both rat catchers and spiritual comforters. A wagging tail in a cold stone abbey could lift a soul during the darkest winters. But dogs in the Middle Ages were also present during darker times. During outbreaks of plague, they were sometimes blamed for spreading disease, though ironically, they were also among the creatures keeping vermin populations in check. In cities like Paris and London, strays roamed the streets in large numbers. Some were feared, some were fed, and some were quietly mourned when they disappeared. It was also during this time that the idea of dog breeds began to take clearer shape. Though not as formalized as they would be in later centuries, dogs were beginning to be grouped by type: sight hounds, scent hounds, guard dogs, companions. Artists and poets of the time often described dogs with great affection. In illuminated manuscripts, we find margin drawings of dogs curled beneath writing desks or leaping playfully near their owners' feet. One remarkable story comes from Scotland, where the legend of Greyfriars Bobby begins, though it wouldn't be widely known until centuries later. This small terrier, said to have loyally guarded his master's grave for 14 years, reflects the deep-rooted medieval ideal of loyalty beyond death. Whether the story grew in truth or in heart, it spoke to a universal belief that dogs did not leave those they loved. Religious symbolism also reflected this bond. In Christian art, dogs came to symbolize faithfulness and vigilance. Saints were often depicted with dogs by their side. Perhaps most famously, Saint Dominic was associated with a black and white dog holding a torch, representing the order of preachers who carried light into the darkness, just as a dog guards the home through the night. In this world of flickering candlelight and creaking wooden doors, Where wolves still roamed forests and night brought uncertainty, the presence of a dog brought reassurance. Whether guarding a chicken coop or curled on a castle hearth, the dog was a steadfast figure in a world full of change. As the Middle Ages stretched into the Renaissance, dogs began to appear more and more in art, poetry, and philosophy. No longer just protectors and hunters, they became symbols of virtue and fidelity, and companions in the deepest emotional sense. And so, in our next chapter, we will step into the warm light of the Renaissance and beyond, to explore how dogs made their mark in art and literature, not just as figures of utility, but as muses and metaphors, forever loyal and ever present. But for now, as the castle gates creak closed and the village lights flicker out, imagine a heavy wooden door, and just inside, curled on a bed of straw, is a dog, one ear twitching, one eye open, always watching, always near. As the darkness of the Middle Ages began to lift and the world turned its gaze toward light, discovery, and beauty, dogs followed us yet again, this time not just through forests or fields, but onto the canvas and into the pages of poetry and prose. In the age of art and literature, dogs were no longer only guardians or hunters. They were symbols, subjects, and sometimes even authors' confidants. During the Renaissance, artists across Europe began painting the world not only as it was, but as it was felt. They painted nobility, myth, religion, and dogs, whether curled beneath the chair of a merchant, nestled in the folds of a duchess's gown, or leaping in the background of a hunt. Dogs appeared as silent storytellers, companions to both the powerful and the ordinary. One of the most tender portraits comes from Titian, the great Venetian painter of the 16th century. In his work, Venus of Urbino, a reclining goddess lounges in soft repose. At her feet, a small dog slumbers, its belly rising and falling with breath. The image speaks volumes of love, of loyalty, of gentle domesticity. The dog is not the center of attention, but it completes the scene, offering a whisper of comfort amid the sensuality. In Northern Europe, painters like Jan van Eyck and Pieter Bruegel the Elder placed dogs in both sacred and everyday scenes. In the Arnolfini portrait, a tiny terrier stands between husband and wife, a symbol of fidelity in marriage. Its small form might seem insignificant, but to the trained eye, it says everything. In medieval and Renaissance symbolism, the presence of a dog often represented faithfulness, trust, and enduring love. And this was not just a European idea. In Persian miniature paintings, dogs can be seen alongside princes in gardens, lying on rugs or trotting beside camels across desert paths. Their forms were painted with care, their expressions alive with intelligence and dignity. As printing presses began to hum and books spread across continents, dogs found their way into literature too. In William Shakespeare's plays, dogs appear not just as animals but as metaphors. They are used to reflect loyalty, bravery, or even scorn. In King Lear, the mad monarch rages that he has been treated worse than a dog. In The Two Gentlemen of Verona, we meet Crab, one of literature's first comedic dogs, silent of course, but stealing scenes nonetheless. Poets, too, found inspiration in canine companionship. Lord Byron, the romantic poet known for his melancholic beauty, wrote a moving epitaph for his dog Boatswain, buried with more grandeur than many humans. The monument still stands at Newstead Abbey, inscribed with Byron Sepp's famous words. Near this spot are deposited the remains of one who possessed beauty without vanity, strength without insolence, courage without ferocity. Even Charles Dickens, writing centuries later in foggy Victorian London, featured dogs in his novels. His characters often mirrored the animals at their side, loyal, misunderstood, ragged, or proud. In fairy tales, dogs played familiar roles. They helped heroes, warned of danger, or guided travelers through enchanted woods. The dog became not only a companion in life, but a comforting figure in stories for children, representing safety, wisdom, and unconditional love. But perhaps the most beautiful part of dogs in art and literature is how they were always seen even when they weren't the focus. In paintings, they sit quietly. In books, they appear in the corners of scenes, never demanding attention, yet somehow grounding the world around them. The symbolism of dogs grew deeper still during this time. In religious works, they represented watchfulness of the soul. In romantic poetry, they stood for love that does not fade. In political satire, they became stand-ins for loyalty or folly, and in portraits of royalty and commoners alike, they were reminders that no matter how grand the crown or how humble the shoes, a dog remained a comforting presence, equal in devotion. Beyond the brush and the pen, real dogs of famous artists and writers became part of their legend. It is said that Franz Marc, the German expressionist painter, adored dogs so deeply that he painted them in brilliant blues, believing the color symbolized spirituality and peace. His painting Dog Lying in the Snow captures the serenity of a creature at rest, an image both simple and profound. Even in philosophy, dogs made appearances. The Greek philosopher Diogenes, who embraced a life of simplicity and shameless honesty, was so closely associated with dogs that he was nicknamed the Dog. He admired the dog's instinctual wisdom and lack of pretense, qualities he believed humans should emulate. And so, through canvas and quill, dogs left their paw prints not only on roads and hearths, but on the very soul of human creativity. They reminded us of loyalty without demand, love without condition, and presence without ego. In our next chapter, we move from paintings and poems to pastures and paddocks. As cities grew and industry spread, dogs once again shifted roles from symbols to workers, helping farmers herd sheep, assisting guards, and adapting to the rise of modern life. But for now, let us rest in this golden age of artistry. Imagine a painter's studio in Florence, sunlight filtering through the windows, a brush glides across canvas, and beneath the table, just barely visible, a tail gently wagging. As the Renaissance gave way to the rumble of wagons on cobblestone streets and the scent of hearth smoke drifting through budding towns, the relationship between humans and dogs quietly evolved once again. It was the early modern era, a time of invention, trade, and transformation, and amid the spinning wheels of progress, dogs moved from dusty farmyards to velvet-cushioned parlors, stepping into a new identity family. The centuries between the 17th and 19th were marked by immense change. Empires rose and fell, cities swelled, and in the countryside the rhythm of rural life, planting, harvesting, tending, continued in steady time. On farms, dogs remained vital. They herded sheep through morning mist, kept chickens safe from foxes, and barked long before an intruder ever knocked. In the green hills of Scotland, border collies emerged as masterful herders, shaped by the wind and stone of the land itself. In England, terriers dug deep into the earth after rats and badgers, fearless and focused. In France, the Breed patrolled flocks with gentle strength, attentive to every movement. And in Germany, dogs like the Pinscher became guards and companions, their loyalty rivaling any knight's oath. These dogs were bred for function, not fashion. Traits were passed down not by beauty but by utility, a strong nose, a sure foot, a calm under pressure. And yet, as breeding became more deliberate, a new idea took hold, one of classification, lineage, and eventually prestige. By the 17th century, the wealthy began to show an interest not just in owning dogs, but in curating them. Breeds like the King Charles Spaniel were cherished not for their hunting skills, but for their appearance and temperament. These lapdogs were often pampered beyond imagination, fed better than many servants and immortalized in oil paintings with their aristocratic owners. Queen Elizabeth I adored her greyhounds. Louis XIV surrounded himself with small, elegant dogs who paraded through the gilded halls of Versailles, and by the time Queen Victoria took the throne in the 19th century, the love of dogs had blossomed into obsession. Queen Victoria's influence on the world of dogs cannot be overstated. She personally owned over 30 different breeds during her lifetime, and helped popularize the Pomeranian, which was originally much larger until selective breeding created the small, fluffy companions we know today. Her affection for dogs inspired noble families across Europe to take an interest in breeding, and soon the idea of a purebred dog began to take root. It was during this period that kennel clubs began to form. The Kennel Club of the United Kingdom was founded in 1873, establishing the first official registry of pedigree dogs. It was followed by others across Europe and eventually in America. With these registries came dog shows, where canines were judged not by their work but by how closely they fit an idealized standard of appearance and behavior. The very first Crufts Dog Show was held in 1891, and it became a grand celebration of breeds, beauty, and bonding. Attending a dog show became a fashionable pastime, and owning a recognized breed became a marker of status. But outside the velvet ropes of the show rings, dogs still held their humble roles. In cities, they became companions to middle-class families, sitting by the door waiting for children to return from school. In villages, they patrolled narrow lanes and barked at the night. In the quiet of evening, a farmer might scratch behind the ears of a tired sheepdog who had worked all day with quiet efficiency. No ribbons, no trophies, just mutual respect. Writers of the era captured this evolving relationship. Charles Dickens often included dogs in his tales of London life, reflecting the grit and heart of his settings. Elizabeth Barrett Browning wrote lovingly of her spaniel Flush, whose gentle companionship comforted her during years of illness and solitude. Thomas Hardy, in his deep and brooding novels, often set dogs at the edge of human drama, watching, silent, ever present. By the end of the 19th century, the idea of dogs as mere workers had softened. They were now seen as members of the household, given names, spoken to with affection, mourned when lost. Photographs from this period show family portraits with dogs front and center, no longer just props or background but kin. This shift was not without complexity. The rise of breed popularity also introduced problems. Some dogs were bred more for appearance than health, leading to fragile lineages and exaggerated features. Debates about breeding ethics, though quieter then, were beginning to stir. Still, in the hearts of most, the love of a dog remained simple. Whether mutt or purebred, hunter or lap companion, the dog was trusted, valued, and loved. As we move into the industrial age in our next chapter, we'll see how dogs adapted once again, taking on new responsibilities in cities, factories, and even hospitals. From police dogs to therapy animals, the dog's role would continue to evolve with the changing world. But tonight, let us pause in a quieter time. Picture a lantern glowing in a farmhouse window. A kettle whistles. A child finishes their evening lessons, and at their feet, curled and dreaming of fields yet to run, is a dog. As the world shifted from plough to piston, from candlelight to electric glow, dogs found themselves navigating a landscape unlike anything they had known before. The soot streaked skyline of the Industrial Revolution changed everything. How people lived, where they worked, and how communities were formed. And through it all, dogs remained by our side, adapting once more to serve in new ways, in new places, with the same old heart. The 19th and early 20th centuries were a time of rapid urbanization. As factories rose and populations swelled, the need for dogs in rural settings, herding, guarding livestock, chasing down predators began to wane. But in the dense streets of London, New York, Berlin, and Tokyo, dogs discovered new callings. Let us begin with the most enduring symbol of the urban working dog, the police dog, in Ghent, Belgium. Around the year 1899, authorities began formally training dogs for law enforcement. These early canine officers helped track suspects, locate missing persons, and patrol busy city streets. Their presence alone was enough to deter trouble, and their loyalty and service soon earned admiration across Europe. From Belgium, the idea spread swiftly. German Shepherds, in particular, rose to prominence for their intelligence, agility, and discipline. In Germany, police departments began developing specialized training programs that laid the foundation for what we now know as K9 units. These dogs were not only efficient, They were respected. Often, they were awarded medals, given formal ranks and honored upon retirement. Some cities even erected statues in their memory, recognizing their unwavering service in times of peace and peril. Beyond the police force, dogs also found work in firehouses. The image of a Dalmatian perched proudly atop a fire engine became iconic in 19th century America. These spotted dogs weren't just decorative, they were functional. In the days of horse-drawn fire wagons, Dalmatians ran ahead, clearing a path through crowded streets. Their strong bond with horses kept the teams calm and focused amid the chaos of flames and sirens. Meanwhile, in homes and hospitals, a quieter revolution was underway. Dogs began serving as emotional healers. Though the term therapy dog would come later, their calming presence had already been noticed. In Florence Nightingale's writings, she described the importance of pets in easing anxiety and offering companionship to patients in long-term care. As industrialization continued, many children grew up in tenement buildings or row houses, far from the fields and forests their ancestors had known. For these children, a dog was a window to joy, a friend who asked nothing, offered everything, and knew nothing of class or coin. Dogs became playmates, guardians and secrets keepers in alleyways and backyards. In literature and newspapers, stories of loyal city dogs began to circulate. In Japan, the tale of Hashiko touched hearts and crossed oceans. This Akita waited at a train station every day for his owner, a professor who had passed away unexpectedly. For 9 years, Hashiko returned unwavering until his own death. Statues were raised, poems written, and his story became a global symbol of devotion. In Russia, a stray named Laika would go even further, from the streets of Moscow to the stars themselves. In 1957, Laika became the first living creature to orbit the Earth aboard Sputnik 2. Though her journey was short and solemn, her sacrifice paved the way for human spaceflight. A stray dog, once unknown and unwanted, became a pioneer of the cosmos. Back on Earth, dogs served in another booming industry: entertainment. In the early days of cinema, dogs became stars. Silent films featured clever canines performing tricks, solving crimes, and melting hearts. Rin Tin Tin, rescued from a World War I battlefield, became one of the most beloved actors of the silver screen. His films were so popular they reportedly saved a struggling Warner Brothers studio from bankruptcy. Meanwhile, dogs like Lassie, born in the pages of novels and later brought to life on screen, captured the imagination of millions. These stories were not just about dogs, they were about loyalty, bravery, and the unbreakable bond between species. But life for dogs in cities wasn't always gentle. In crowded neighborhoods, stray dogs struggled for food and safety. Dog catchers patrolled the streets, and not all communities had shelters or humane laws. Yet even here the tide began to turn. Animal welfare movements gained strength during the 19th century, leading to the founding of societies dedicated to the care and protection of animals. In 1824, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals (RSPCA) was founded in London. The first organization of its kind, it inspired the creation of similar groups across the world, advocating for better treatment, legal protections, and public education. These changes marked a profound shift. No longer were dogs simply judged by their usefulness. They were valued for their presence, their companionship, and the silent comfort they offered in a bustling industrial world. As the 20th century progressed, dogs would continue to expand their roles, serving in wars, assisting the disabled, and becoming cherished members of families in every corner of the globe. But as the factory whistles fade and the cobbled streets quiet for the night, imagine a humble home, warm with lamplight. A child stirs in their sleep, a parent tucks in the last edge of a blanket, and beside the door, still and steadfast, a dog lies watching, just as they always have. As the 20th century marched forward, the world was pulled into two great storms, World War I and World War II, conflicts so vast and so devastating, they touched nearly every corner of the earth. In these darkest of times, where trenches stretched endlessly and silence was broken by thunderous shellfire, not in paintings or poetry this time, but in mud, blood and smoke, carrying out acts of loyalty so profound they are remembered even now with reverent awe. It is difficult to imagine a dog in war. Their nature, so gentle, so loyal, so full of joy, seems at odds with the brutality of battle. And yet, throughout history, dogs have stood with soldiers, offering not just service but solace. They served as messengers, scouts, guards and comforters, and sometimes as heroes. During World War I, as Europe was torn apart by trench warfare, dogs proved invaluable on the front lines. The networks of trenches were complex, winding, and often cut off by artillery fire. Human runners were frequently injured or killed. But dogs, fast, low to the ground, and able to navigate tight spaces, could dart through the chaos to deliver critical messages. One such dog was Cher Ami, a carrier pigeon's companion and mascot of the 77th Infantry Division. Though not a dog himself, Cher Ami's bravery inspired many, and he was often escorted and guarded by the division's dogs, animals who learned to recognize wounded men and guide medics to their side. Then there was Stubby, perhaps the most famous dog of World War I. Found wandering the grounds of Yale University where soldiers were training, Stubby was smuggled aboard a troopship to France by a private named John Robert Conroy. What began as a bit of mischief became legend. Stubby served in 17 battles, warning of gas attacks, locating wounded soldiers, and even capturing a German spy. For his service, he was promoted to Sergeant Stubby, a title he held proudly. In World War II, the use of dogs became even more structured. The United States War Dog Program, known as the K9 Corps, was established in 1942. Thousands of dogs were trained for military service, often donated by families who gave up their beloved pets in the name of duty. German Shepherds, Doberman Pinschers, Boxers, and Labrador Retrievers were among the most common breeds selected. These dogs performed countless duties. Some, called scout dogs, moved silently ahead of troops, sniffing out ambushes. Others served as mine detectors, trained to recognize the faintest chemical changes in soil. Messenger dogs braved fire and rubble to carry orders, and sentry dogs stood watch through the darkest nights, alert to the quietest footfall. In the Pacific Theater, dogs were essential in the dense jungles of islands like Guam and Okinawa. Kurt the Doberman, one of the first war dogs to land on Guam, gave his life alerting troops to a hidden enemy. He was later honored by the United States Marine Corps, and a bronze statue was erected in his memory on the island, a faithful figure overlooking the sea. In addition to their roles in battle, dogs served as emotional lifelines for soldiers. War stripped men of nearly everything: comfort, safety, even identity. But a dog with its warm eyes and wagging tail offered something profoundly human in the midst of inhumanity. Soldiers often wrote home about their canine companions, describing them not just as helpers but as friends and even family. One poignant account tells of a medic in Europe who kept a small mixed-breed dog named Chips by his side. During a particularly brutal engagement, Chips broke free from his handler and charged into a machine gun nest, distracting the enemy long enough for soldiers to capture the position. He was wounded, but survived. For his bravery, Chips was awarded the Silver Star and Purple Heart, though later regulations would revoke them, stating that animals were not eligible for military decorations. Still, to those who served beside him, Chips was nothing less than a soldier. Dogs also served on the home front. In cities across the world, they participated in civil defense drills, comforted families during air raids, and served in hospitals as therapy animals for wounded veterans. In Britain, dogs wore gas masks during drills and helped sniff out survivors in bombed-out buildings. But their service came at a price. Thousands of dogs were injured or killed in action, and those who returned home often bore scars, not only physical but emotional. Some, unable to adjust to civilian life, were rehomed or retired to quiet countryside homes. Others were reunited with the families who had once given them up, returning not as pets but as veterans. War is a heavy subject, and sleep asks for softness. But in this chapter of sorrow, there is also hope, for even in the most shattered corners of human history, dogs remained true. They did not question orders. They did not hesitate. They stayed. And in staying, they reminded soldiers, many of them frightened boys not much older than the dogs themselves, that they were not alone. As peace slowly returned and nations began to rebuild, the role of dogs shifted once more. No longer needed in foxholes or fire watchtowers, they found new places in show rings, in family homes, and increasingly in hearts. In the next chapter, we'll explore how the post-war world embraced the idea of the purebred dog, ushering in an age of dog shows, prestige, and pedigree. But tonight, as taps echo across the memory of distant fields, picture a soldier's hand resting on a dog's head. No words needed, just a silent bond forged in hardship and held forever. As the world exhaled after war, and cities rebuilt brick by brick, a new chapter in the history of dogs began, one shaped not by the demands of survival, but by aesthetic ideals, breed standards, and societal prestige. The dog, once a humble farmhand and fearless soldier, was now stepping into an era of refinement, recognition, and sometimes even ribbons. The fascination with purebred dogs had quietly simmered for centuries, but it was in the 19th and early 20th centuries that it truly blossomed into a movement. Dog lovers, breeders, and naturalists sought to classify dogs into specific types based on appearance, temperament, and purpose. The age of the show dog had arrived. At the heart of this movement were kennel clubs. The Kennel Club of the United Kingdom, founded in 1873, became the first official registry of dog breeds. Its goal was to standardize breeding, set guidelines, and promote exhibitions. The idea was simple: create an official record of lineage, and recognize dogs not just as companions but as the result of careful design. The American Kennel Club, established in 1884, followed suit, as did many others around the world. Each organization published detailed breed standards, documents describing the ideal appearance, gait, temperament, and proportions of each recognized breed. These blueprints became the basis for dog shows, and for many breeders, the target toward which they shaped their dogs. Perhaps the most famous of these shows is Crufts, founded by Charles Cruft in 1891. What began as a modest competition became the gold standard of dog exhibitions. Today, Crufts is the largest dog show in the world, drawing tens of thousands of dogs and spectators to Birmingham, England each year. In the glittering rings of Crufts and Westminster, dogs are judged not on their loyalty or their ability to herd sheep, but on how closely they match the breed standard. Every feature is examined: ears, eyes, tail carriage, fur texture, gait. The result? A celebration of canine beauty, precision, and lineage. Some of the most celebrated breeds of this era include the Pekingese, once the prized companion of Chinese emperors, now dazzling spectators with its flowing mane and dignified waddle. The Afghan Hound, with its regal posture and long silky coat that seems to glide through the air like a whisper. The Dachshund, affectionately known as the sausage dog, originally bred to flush badgers, but now more likely to charm a judge. And the Bulldog, once bred for bull baiting, now beloved for its stoic charm and signature underbite. Some show dogs became celebrities in their own right. Chat. Warren Remedy, a smooth fox terrier, won Best in Show at Westminster 3 times in the early 1900s. In more recent years, dogs like Ano the Beagle, Sky the Wire Fox Terrier, and Wasabi the Pekingese have charmed viewers across television screens and digital feeds alike. But while the rise of the purebred brought structure and admiration, it also brought complexity. With an emphasis on appearance, some breeds were pushed to extremes: noses shortened, backs lengthened, coats overgrown. In some cases, this pursuit of perfection led to health issues: respiratory difficulties in flat-faced breeds, joint problems in large breeds, and inherited disorders from narrow gene pools. Critics began to speak out, urging breeders and judges to prioritize function and health over exaggerated form. To address these concerns, many kennel clubs began revising breed standards, encouraging ethical breeding practices, and promoting health testing. New organizations also emerged, like the United Kennel Club, which emphasized dogs as companions and working animals, not just showpieces. Meanwhile, the world outside the show ring was embracing dogs of every shape and background. Mixed breeds, often affectionately called mutts, became cherished in homes around the globe. The rise of animal shelters, rescue organizations, and public awareness campaigns in the mid to late 20th century reminded people that a dog's worth lies not in its pedigree, but in its presence. And yet, the allure of the show dog remained. For many, it was a celebration of history, of careful breeding, of cultural heritage. Breeds like the Basenji, once found in the African Congo, or the Saluki, a desert sighthound treasured by Bedouins, offered windows into distant times and places. Dog shows also became opportunities for community, for education, and for joy. Children learned patience and discipline through junior handler competitions. Spectators discovered the diversity of the canine world, hundreds of breeds, each with its own quirks, tales, and charms. But perhaps the most touching moments at these events aren't when trophies are handed out, but when the dog and handler share a quiet glance, a tail wag, a reassuring touch, a shared breath. For all the pomp and polish, the heart of it remains the same, a bond between two beings, old as time and deep as devotion. Next, we'll step into the bright lights and humming screens of the modern age, where dogs become icons, celebrities, and even memes, charming the world not from the show ring but from the silver screen and our smartphone scrolls. But for now, imagine the hush of a grand exhibition hall, the glint of a polished leash, the whisper of paws on carpet, and in the center of the spotlight, a dog, proud, poised, and perfectly unaware of how loved it truly is. With the flicker of film and the glow of television screens, dogs found their way into the modern world's most powerful storyteller, popular culture. No longer just loyal companions in the quiet corners of home, dogs stepped confidently into the spotlight, capturing hearts, inspiring laughter, and becoming beloved icons of every generation. From the golden age of cinema to the viral videos of today, dogs have shaped and been shaped by the stories we tell and the emotions we share. Let's begin with Hollywood's four-legged stars. In the early 20th century, silent films introduced the world to canine actors whose charisma leapt off the screen, even without a single bark. The most famous among them was Rin Tin Tin, a German shepherd rescued from a bombed-out kennel in France during World War I. Brought to America by a soldier named Lee Duncan, Rin Tin Tin became a sensation. With over 20 films to his name, he was credited with saving Warner Brothers from financial ruin. Audiences adored his bravery, his loyalty, and his expressive eyes that seemed to hold entire stories within them. Another film favorite was Lassie, the collie who always knew when little Timmy was in trouble. First appearing in a short story in the 1930s, Lassie quickly leapt to books, movies, and then television, becoming a household name. For decades, Lassie was the epitome of devotion, intelligence, and grace under pressure. Cartoons, too, embraced dogs with boundless enthusiasm. Who could forget Snoopy, the daydreaming beagle from Peanuts, whose fantasies of being a flying ace and smooth novelist brought endless charm? Or Scooby-Doo, the comically cowardly Great Dane who, alongside his mystery-solving friends, showed us that even the scared can be heroes. And then there's Pluto, Mickey Mouse's playful and loyal pup, who brought warmth to the animated world of Disney, bounding into hearts with his floppy ears and big, goofy grin. Dogs even became superheroes. Crypto the Superdog, loyal companion to Superman, brought canine courage to comic books and cartoons, while real-life dogs became heroes in their own right through televised rescue shows and news features. But it wasn't just in fictional worlds that dogs captured attention. In the mid-20th century, President Franklin D. Roosevelt's Scottish Terrier Fala became a national celebrity. Fala traveled with the president, attended speeches, and even had his own press coverage. Later, Bo and Sunny, the Portuguese water dogs of the Obama family, brought a sense of playfulness and relatability to the White House. As television evolved, dog shows gained prime-time attention. Events like the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show were broadcast to millions, turning show dogs into stars, complete with fan followings and sponsorships. Viewers tuned in not just to admire the pageantry, but to celebrate the sheer diversity and beauty of the canine world. And with the arrival of the internet, dogs truly conquered the world. In the early days of online videos, one of the first viral sensations was Tillman, the skateboarding bulldog who zipped down sidewalks with surprising skill. Then came Boo, the impossibly fluffy Pomeranian dubbed the cutest dog in the world, followed closely by Doug the Pug, whose costume photos earned him millions of followers and partnerships with global brands. Memes embraced the lovable absurdity of dog behavior. The Doge meme, featuring a Shiba Inu with a knowing side eye and colorful Comic Sans captions, became a symbol of internet humor, and later, a cryptocurrency mascot. With phrases like "much wow" and "so excite," Doge spoke a strange and joyful language all its own. More recently, social media has given rise to rescue dog influencers who share their journeys from hardship to healing. Pages like the Dodo and Wedge Dogs have turned stories of adoption and resilience into celebrations of second chances. These accounts don't just entertain, they inspire compassion and action, encouraging millions to support animal shelters and rescue organizations. In music, dogs have found their place as well. Songs like Old Shep by Elvis Presley or Shannon by Henry Gross are tributes to beloved pets. While contemporary artists often feature their dogs in music videos, album covers, and lyrics. Through all these appearances on screen, in memes, in politics and pop, it becomes clear that dogs hold a unique space in human culture. They are relatable, yet idealized. They mirror our moods, amplify our joy, and soften our grief. A dog in a movie can make us weep with a single glance. A dog on our feed can brighten our day with one goofy bounce. And as our screens become more crowded and our lives more digital, the image of a dog, wide-eyed, honest, and ever-present, reminds us of something simpler: a walk outside, a belly rub, a wagging tail. In the next chapter, we'll step away from screens and into science, where researchers are uncovering the secrets of the canine mind, their intelligence, their emotions, and just how deeply they understand us. But before we go, take a moment to remember your favorite dog on screen. Whether animated or real, barking or silent, chances are they made you smile, because in every wag, every trick, every heroic leap or sleepy nap, they bring us closer to the part of ourselves that still believes in love, loyalty, and a friend who always shows up. Beneath the soft ears, the wagging tail, and the curious nose lies a mystery that scientists have only recently begun to understand: the canine mind. For centuries, we knew dogs as friends and workers, guardians and jesters, but now, through the lens of science, we are learning just how remarkable these companions truly are. The field of canine science, once dismissed as sentimental or frivolous, has grown into a serious area of study. Researchers around the world have sought to understand how dogs think, feel, and interact with the world. And the more we learn, the more we realize that the connection between dogs and humans is not just emotional, it's biological. Let's begin with what's perhaps the most extraordinary revelation. Dogs are uniquely wired to understand us. Studies have shown that dogs are better than almost any other species, including chimpanzees, at interpreting human gestures. Point to something, and a dog will look where you're pointing. Raise your eyebrows, and a dog may tilt its head. They've learned to read our eyes, our tone, our posture, and even our moods. At the University of Budapest, scientists used MRI machines to scan the brains of dogs while they listened to their owners speak. What they found was astonishing. Dogs not only process human words, but also tone of voice in a way that mirrors how our own brains do it. When we say "good dog" in a loving tone, their brains light up in the reward centers, just like ours would if someone complimented us. Another study revealed that dogs can actually recognize their owner's scent even after years apart, triggering emotional centers in the brain. In fact, the bond between a dog and a person is so profound that it activates the same hormone, oxytocin, that mothers produce when bonding with their babies. And while we've always known that dogs have sharp noses, science has shown just how otherworldly their sense of smell truly is. A dog's nose can detect individual molecules. They can sense diseases, detect explosives, and even smell emotions. Yes, your dog may actually smell when you're nervous or sad, based on subtle chemical changes in your sweat. But it's not just about what they sense, it's also about what they feel. Research from the University of London and other institutions has explored canine emotion. Dogs experience a range of feelings: joy, fear, anxiety, excitement, and even jealousy. If you've ever pet another dog and seen your own pup wedge itself between you with a pointed look, you've witnessed what scientists now recognize as a form of emotional awareness. Dogs also exhibit empathetic behavior. In experiments where humans pretended to cry, many dogs would approach, whine, or attempt to comfort them. This isn't just a coincidence. It's a response to social cues, and it speaks to the deep emotional intelligence dogs have developed over millennia alongside humans. But intelligence comes in many forms. Some dogs excel at problem solving, others at memory, and still others at reading the room. Border collies, like the famous dog Chaser, have been taught to recognize over 1,000 words and objects. Poodles, German Shepherds, and Golden Retrievers often rank high in cognitive tests, but researchers are quick to point out every breed has its own kind of genius. Some dogs are emotional geniuses, some are scent superstars, some are puzzle solvers, and some, well, they may not open the treat box, but they'll sit beside you on your hardest days, asking for nothing in return. And isn't that a kind of wisdom? Modern science has also revealed insights into aging and health. Dogs are now studied as models for human aging, because their lifespans allow researchers to examine developmental changes in a shorter time. Studies like the Dog Aging Project, a large-scale initiative in the United States, are helping us understand genetics, longevity, and the effects of lifestyle on lifespan. This has led to better diets, improved veterinary care, and deeper awareness of how to support dogs through all stages of life, from bouncy pup to wise old friend. And perhaps one of the most beautiful scientific developments has been the formal recognition of dogs as therapy and support animals. Trained to assist people with mobility issues, visual impairments, PTSD, autism, and more, these dogs demonstrate not only skill, but something harder to define: compassion. There is something profound about a creature who sees you at your weakest, hears the tremble in your voice, senses the shake in your hand, and moves closer, not because it was told, but because it knows. As we drift toward the final chapter in our journey, the science of dogs leaves us not with equations or cold data, but with a deeper understanding of something we already felt in our bones: that dogs are not just animals living beside us. They are beings who know us, choose us, and stay. In our final chapter, we'll bring everything together: past and present, science and story, and reflect on the timeless role of dogs in our lives today, the roles they play, the love they give, and the quiet, enduring ways they make our world feel more like home. But before we move on, picture your dog, or the dog you once knew, or even the one you hope to meet one day. Think of their eyes, their warmth, their patience, and know that science now agrees they really do understand more than we ever gave them credit for. After thousands of years, after cave fires, pharaohs, crusades, empires, revolutions, and rockets to the stars, one thing remains true: the dog is still here. Today, in the 21st century, dogs are more than helpers or heroes. They are family. They live in our homes, sleep on our couches, ride in our cars, and appear in our photos. They are the heartbeat beside us on morning walks, the warm weight by our feet on cold nights, and the eyes that meet ours without judgment, expectation, or condition. There are nearly 1 billion dogs around the world today. Some live in high-rise apartments, some in countryside cottages, some work on farms, patrol airports, visit hospitals, or guide the blind through busy streets. Others chase tennis balls in backyards, nap in sunbeams, or sit quietly beside us as we read, write, or dream. Their roles are more diverse than ever before. There are guide dogs for the visually impaired, trained to navigate intersections and crowded train stations with calm precision. Service dogs help veterans cope with trauma, alert their owners before seizures, or remind those with anxiety to breathe deeply in moments of panic. There are sniffer dogs who detect contraband at customs, rescue dogs who find survivors beneath rubble after earthquakes, and emotional support animals who remind us that even on the hardest days, we are not alone. And then there are the millions of dogs who perform no special job at all, except the most sacred one being there. In cities, dogs wait by the door when they hear your footsteps on the stairs. In suburbs, they greet the mail carrier like an old friend. In rural villages, they follow barefoot children through winding paths, tails wagging like pendulums of joy. Their presence weaves into every culture, every class, every climate. In Bhutan, dogs roam freely through temples, often fed by monks and community members who believe in kindness to all beings. In Iceland, sheepdogs guide flocks across lava fields. In Brazil, you'll find rescue dogs trained to protect endangered animals from poachers. In Japan, you might pass a Shiba Inu patiently waiting outside a bakery, ears perked, calm and loyal. Wherever we are, the story is the same. The dog is with us. And as much as we give to them, food, shelter, toys, baths, they give far more in return. They remind us how to live in the moment. They forgive quickly, love freely, and never count our flaws. They teach us patience, presence, and how to listen without needing to speak. They are often with us at the most pivotal times of life. A dog may welcome a newborn home. A dog may comfort a teenager in tears. A dog may sit with someone in their final moments, offering silent comfort that not even words can reach. They become part of our rituals, birthday hats, Christmas stockings, beach trips, Sunday walks. They are in our traditions, our habits, and our hearts. They ask for so little: a kind word, a gentle hand, a bit of your time. And when their time comes, and it always comes too soon, they leave behind not just fur in the corners or bowls by the door, but something far more lasting, a space in our hearts shaped exactly like their love. It is never truly empty. It simply becomes a quieter kind of full. Dogs are not perfect. They can be messy, noisy, stubborn, but in their imperfection they mirror something beautiful in ourselves. They do not need us to be perfect either. They only need us to be present. And in return, they are there, always. Through the ups and downs of life, through grief and celebration, through pandemics and parties, dogs remain our timeless companions. Their history is not just the story of a species, it is the story of us. Of how a wild animal sat by a fire and never left. Of how we welcomed that animal in and never looked back. As we close this chapter of our journey, know this: no matter where you are, no matter what kind of day you've had, there is comfort in knowing that somewhere a dog is dreaming, ears twitching, tail gently tapping, maybe even dreaming of you. And so, dear students, our long and gentle journey draws to a close. We have wandered together through Ice Age forests and ancient cities, stood beside pharaohs and foot soldiers, walked the cobblestone streets of empires and the bright-lit rings of show halls. We've looked into the minds of dogs through the lens of science, and into the hearts of dogs through the pages of art, myth, and memory. From the flicker of the first firelight where wolf met man, to the hum of today's home where dog and human share a quiet moment before sleep, this has always been a story of companionship. Not forced, not demanded, but chosen. A story where one species looked into the eyes of another and saw not a rival, not a threat, but a friend. The history of dogs is not just about breeds, battles, or ribbons. It's about trust. It's about presence. It's about the simple, powerful truth that some bonds do not need words to be understood. Wherever you are tonight, whether you share your bed with a soft snoring pup or carry memories of one long gone, know that you are part of this ancient and ongoing story, a tale written in muddy paw prints and nuzzles, in shared silences and wagging tails. So close your eyes now. Let your thoughts drift softly to grassy fields, to warm hearths, to the steady rhythm of paws on forest paths. And as sleep begins to find you, may you carry with you the warmth of loyalty, the comfort of companionship, and the knowledge that somewhere across centuries and continents, a dog has always been there, watching, waiting, loving. Good night, students. Sleep well, and may your dreams be full of gentle snuffles, soft ears, and wagging tails.